Hello everybody, Trevor here. Kingdom Hearts, one of my absolute favorite video gaming franchises of all time, along with many others, including Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. There are so many things I love about Kingdom Hearts, and it's not just the characters themselves, but also the fun and easy gameplay, the epic music by Yoko Shimomura, and the confusing yet very consistent storyline. But my most favorite thing of all are the Disney worlds, one of my favorites being the Toy Box, which is based on Pixar's Toy Story. But there are a lot of new Disney worlds that have yet to appear in the series, and that's why I'm making a top 10 most wanted worlds in Kingdom Hearts. For this list, not only will I include new Disney worlds, but also old ones that I think deserve a return. Also, I'm not going to include any worlds based on properties that were bought by Disney, whether they be Marvel, Star Wars, or Fox. Why? Because they weren't created by Disney in the first place. Also, it'd be totally weird seeing The Simpsons in Kingdom Hearts because that's not really a kid's show, and it was created by Fox, not Disney. However, Pixar and certain Touchstone films are a couple of exceptions, because at least those movies feel like Disney, and some of them are already in the Kingdom Hearts franchise, so that's totally fine. You can also retitle this as my top 10 worlds I'd like to see in Kingdom Hearts, and it doesn't have to be in Kingdom Hearts 4, it can be in 5, 6, or so on and so forth. In addition, I am not going to include any original worlds with the exception for 2, but I'll get to them in a little bit. And yes, this excludes Final Fantasy because the Final Fantasy characters don't represent themselves entirely in the Kingdom Hearts series. And I think it should stay that way. Now, on to the countdown. Number 10, Destiny Islands. Destiny Islands. The home world of Sora, Riku, and Kairi, as well as the first level in the first Kingdom Hearts game. I know it's a small world, but there is a mainland on Destiny Islands. Do you remember the old cutscenes like the one where Kairi and Selphie are in their school uniforms, as well as kid versions of Sora and Riku where they look at the night sky? Yeah, that's the mainland part of Destiny Islands, and I personally want that area to be playable in future games, and maybe we'll get to see their parents too. Wouldn't that be nice? Number 9, Shibuya. No, I'm not talking about Quadratum. I'm talking about the other Shibuya that's based on The World Ends With You, which has been teased in Dream Drop Distance. While I never played The World Ends With You, unfortunately, but I heard it's a good game, and I hope the upcoming anime and sequel will go well too. According to Nomura, this Shibuya is not the same one as Quadratum, because that Quadratum is based on Virum Rex, and it's also where Yozora resides. This really confused me when I first found that out on the KingdomHeartsWiki.net, because I always thought there should always be one Shibuya, but according to that website, there are 2 different ones. I still hope we'll get to see Neku and his friends again in the near future. Number 8, The Sword in the Stone. Sword in the Stone is a painfully average film. It's mostly padding and kind of boring, which is why I didn't like the film that much as a kid. However, I do like the characters Merlin and Mad Madam Mim, as well as their respective songs. The reason why I wanted this world to be introduced in Kingdom Hearts is because it made a non-canonical appearance in a Spanish comic book called The Scepter and the Kingdom, where Sora meets Arthur and Archimedes for the first time. But the only character from that world who appeared in the Kingdom Hearts games so far is Merlin. And he's one of those magicians who has major roles in the games, along with Yensid, the fairy godmother from Cinderella, and the 3 good fairies from Sleeping Beauty. Another interesting thing about that particular comic book was that La Cité des Cloches also made an appearance, but its official appearance didn't occur until Dream Drop Distance. I also would like to see Merlin train Arthur not only to be the new King of England, but maybe teach him how to wield a Keyblade one day. Wouldn't that be nice? Lastly, I think Mad Madam Mim should be the boss of that world because she's technically the main villain of that film and can transform into any animal, including a dragon. Number 7 goes to Lilo and Stitch. We've seen the deep space part of the Lilo and Stitch world in Birth by Sleep. Now we want to see the Hawaiian portion of that world, just so Sora and company can meet Lilo and her big sister for the first time, and maybe add in Pleakley into the mix despite being dropped from Birth by Sleep. And I don't know about you guys, but I think Gantu is a pretty awesome villain because not only he's huge and ruthless, but also voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, who was also the original voice of Crunch Bandicoot from the Crash Bandicoot series. Also, in terms of story elements, I think they should either use the events from the first movie or at least make one up that takes place after the first film. You know how the worlds of Toy Story and Big Hero 6 took place after their respective first films? I bet Square Enix will probably do the same thing for Lilo and Stitch. Number 6. Pocahontas. As historically inaccurate as this movie is, I still think it's a pretty good film. Why? Well, because I like the beautiful animation, likable characters, memorable songs, and lighthearted story, which in my opinion is better than the true story. A long time ago, I've made myself a theory that Pocahontas might be one of the new Seven Hearts. After all, she is a Disney princess, but sadly doesn't get a lot of attention like Ariel, Belle, and Jasmine. And so far, Rapunzel, Anna, and Elsa are 3 of the new Seven Hearts along with Kyrie. So, why not add in Pocahontas into the mix? Lastly, as mediocre as the sequel was, I still think they should also use some elements from that film too, particularly with John Rolfe, who marries Pocahontas just like in real life, and that's the only thing that makes the sequel worth watching. Number 5. The Princess and the Frog. Princess and the Frog is a great movie. It was one of the last 2 traditionally hand-drawn animated films by Disney along with Winnie the Pooh 2011. In fact, I consider it a huge improvement over Home on the Range in terms of characters, songs, and story. Do you remember the Disney Villains Council that was led by Maleficent back in the first Kingdom Hearts game? What if Maleficent decided to revive that organization by recruiting new members such as Dr. Facilier? I mean, it's been a while since we've got new members of that council. Why not have Dr. Facilier be part of that group and he can be the main boss of the Princess and the Frog world? After all, he is a pretty good villain. Also, I think it would make perfect sense for Tiana to be one of the new Seven Hearts because she is a Disney princess too. As for the turning into a frog scenario, I'll have to think about how that's going to work for Sora and company. Should they all turn into frogs just like Tiana and Naveen? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. Number 4 goes to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'm sure some of you are asking me, wait a minute, Trevor, isn't Who Framed Roger Rabbit a Touchstone film, and aren't you only going to include Disney-created worlds only? Well, yes and yes. But Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of the only few Touchstone movies that's considered Disney, along with The Nightmare Before Christmas. And if Nightmare Before Christmas appeared in Kingdom Hearts as a world, then I think they should do the same thing for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. When I was a kid, I was scared of this film mainly because of Judge Doom in his true toon form. But as a grown adult, I start to appreciate this movie more in terms of its originality and use of characters, including the Disney ones like Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. I also think Judge Doom will make a great boss fight in the series. But wait, some of you may also say, Who Framed Roger Rabbit also has non-Disney properties like the Looney Tunes and Betty Boop. How is that going to work in Kingdom Hearts? Simple. You don't need those types of characters in Kingdom Hearts. They can just only use the Disney ones as well as the original characters like Roger Rabbit, Jessica Rabbit, and Benny the Cab. I mean, that's what they did with the Wreck-It Ralph world in Union Cross, so why not do the same thing for this movie? And the world can be called Toontown. Imagine there to be returning Heartless that appeared in Timeless River like the Hot Rod, Hammer Frame, and the Aeroplane. Wouldn't that be awesome? Number 3. Agrabah. Now, I know I'm going to get some hate in the comments for this, but I still think Agrabah should come back at least one last time just so they can use events from the 3rd and final movie. I want to see Aladdin reunite with his long-lost father Cassim, and I also would like to see Saluk as the boss of that world. And in my opinion, Aladdin the King of Thieves is my most favorite direct-to-video sequel, next to The Lion King 2 Simba's Pride. Oh, and speaking of which, number 2, The Pride Lands. Ever since the announcement of Kingdom Hearts 3, I really wanted this world to come back in that particular game, but unfortunately, it didn't happen. But hey, at least we got Pirates of the Caribbean back in that game. The biggest reason why I want this world to come back in Kingdom Hearts is because I like to see Sora go on adventures with Kiara and Kovu, and together they can fight and defeat Zira, who in my opinion is a pretty good villain. And despite the sequel's flaws, I still think it's one of the better Disney sequels out there, and deserves to be part of the Kingdom Hearts world canon. Before I get to my number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions. Chicken Little. I was going to add this to the list because the main character from that particular movie made a summon appearance in Kingdom Hearts 2, but I decided to drop it in order to avoid massive backlash from my subscribers and haters. And I can understand why a lot of people didn't like this movie because of its wacky nature and unlikable characters. Deep Jungle from Tarzan. It was going to return in Chain of Memories, but due to copyright issues, it's never coming back. And that's a shame because I kind of like this world despite its problems. I mean, the music's nice and there's a lot of new story potential you can use in this world, like The Legend of Tarzan, for instance. Atlantica from Little Mermaid. I like this world too, but I can see why some people didn't like it due to the controls for Sora as a merman. Yeah, it can be pretty tedious sometimes. Also, The Little Mermaid 2 wasn't the greatest sequel in my opinion because Morgana has the same exact voice as her deceased sister, and Ariel was a bit out of character in that movie. 100 Acre Wood from Winnie the Pooh. We all know it's gonna come back in future games. I mean, it's so obvious. Ralph Breaks the Internet. I'm pretty sure this will occur in Kingdom Hearts 4 or so because we already have the first Wreck-It Ralph movie in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, so there is a good chance that the sequel might appear in future games. Zootopia. I'm pretty sure it will appear in Kingdom Hearts 4 or 5 as a world. I hope. Moana. Same reasons as with Zootopia. Pixar's Coco. Again, same reasons as with Zootopia and Moana. And my number 1 most anticipated world in the Kingdom Hearts series is The Jungle Book. This one is long overdue because not only that The Jungle Book is one of my absolute favorite Disney films, but it was going to appear in the first Kingdom Hearts game as well as Birth by Sleep, but it was dropped for 2 reasons. 1, it's too similar to Deep Jungle from Tarzan. 2nd, there wasn't any room for it in Birth by Sleep. And that's a shame because The Jungle Book was one of Walt Disney's greatest films he had ever made. And it's full of lovable and relatable characters like Mowgli, Baloo, Bagheera, and one of my favorites, King Louie, which is my avatar for these types of videos. I also love the memorable songs like I Wanna Be Like You and The Bare Necessities. Not to mention that Shere Khan is one of my favorite Disney villains and deserves to be a boss in Kingdom Hearts. It's one of my lifelong dreams in the franchise. Also, I can't wait to explore the ancient ruins in the Jungle Book world, and I can imagine a brand new Heartless that's based on that collapsing tower during the monkey chase scene. And it can be called the Toppling Tower. But that's just a pipe dream, so it may not happen. But still, I'm dying for the Jungle Book world to appear for once in Kingdom Hearts because, as I said before, it's one of my favorite Disney films from my childhood, and I used to watch it all the time. Square Enix, if you're watching this, then please, I beg of you, put the Jungle Book in Kingdom Hearts as a brand new world. It's been dropped from the series for so long that I don't think I can wait any longer. Well, that was my top 10 worlds I'd like to see in Kingdom Hearts. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to comment below. And I'd like to know what are your ideas for new or returning worlds in the Kingdom Hearts series because the possibilities are endless. And it doesn't have to be Disney or Pixar. It can be original worlds too, as long as they are created or bought by Disney, then that would be okay. For my next top 10, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite preschool franchises from my childhood and use my Trevor the Traction Engine avatar for that. This is Trevor Davis, signing off.